Very much, Rinku, for the introduction, and I am very honored to be here. Hello, everybody. Today, I want to talk about headless and getting from those old MVC builds that many of us have had the unfortunate pleasure of working with into something a little more modern and trying to figure out, is it really XM Cloud that we're going to? Does an XM or XP headless make sense? And what are the things we've got to think about along the way? Now, I see some names of friends in the chat here that I've known over the years, but for those of you who I've not had the pleasure to meet, hello, my name's Jason. Outside of being a VP over at Fish Tank, where I lead a team that's kind of focused on all kinds of like community engagement and content creation and also sales and marketing and stuff like that. I also tend to do a bunch of stuff with my family. I prioritize family a lot, as well as getting into anything I can do with writing or gaming. Any of you who happen to follow my content that's on jasonstcyr.com knows that it's not just Sitecore stuff, and in fact is mostly not Sitecore stuff these days, as I try to explore different ways to be creative. I've been doing this community thing a long time now. As Rinku mentioned, I did Sitecore for a while, and before that, I was actually at the partner side before that, at a little shop called Nonlinear Creations over here in Canada. That was feels like a lifetime ago, but I've been very happy that I've been able to spend so much time here in the community, being able to work with so many different people in so many different countries over the years. And I'm glad I get to be here today. So honored that you invited me. And hopefully, we're going to get to something interesting today that you'll be able to learn and have some questions. The plan of what I wanted to go through over the next while is going to be trying to look at XM Cloud, XP headless. What are the benefits there of both? Why are people doing this? And serverless infrastructure. So there's this better way of delivering infrastructure where you don't have to handle everything yourself. And then finally, what are some of the considerations that we have to look at? Either strategies or gotchas, of the type of stuff that we're going to have to think through as we're going on this path going forward. Now, I am grateful to be here because of my employer, Fish Tank, that is being able to make me able to go out, help out with the community. It's something that Fish Tank believes in a lot. We've done a whole bunch of work over the years to build up a lot of industry expertise. And one of the things we're really proud about is that we are exclusively Sitecore. It's the only thing we do, and we invest a lot in that, especially in XM Cloud. And one of the things we're most known for is our thought leadership. So we at Fish Tank, pretty much everybody in the company is creating content, mostly written. If you haven't seen one of our blogs yet, you probably will eventually when you try to Google search a topic. I think this says over 200. I think we almost hit 300 now that it's December for 2024. We just have so many people who are invested in creating, giving back. It's one of the reasons that I went and joined Fish Tank, is it aligned so well with how I feel about trying to help others. So that's one of those things where now we have all these other folks who come and are using our content to help themselves. So we see it as a really great way to start that conversation with other industry companies or other community members, just to get to know everybody. Now, let's get into the meat of it. Let's start talking about the why, right? There's obviously going to be some challenges that are out there right now. And why is it now that people are picking, this is what we want to do now? We want to talk about headless. We want to talk about XM Cloud. When we look at Sitecore XP, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on under the hood, and businesses are needing to modernize some of this. And there's some areas that are making it a challenge. So I'm going to walk through some of these pieces. So first off, if we look at the local development experience, first of all, working in Sitecore MVC code, it works, but it's dated. It doesn't feel right if you're coming into this new and you're used to a more modern tech stack. Everybody's got to install Sitecore. You've got these full installations of everything. Often you're doing Docker now, so at least makes it a little bit easier. But this can get frustrating for folks coming from a front end background. You start winding up like spinning up VMs to share and stuff like that to try to work around this problem. So this can be part of the frustrating factor. Then when we look at how do we take all that code and take all our content and then get that into other environments, our whole DevOps process, CI/CD, we're trying to maintain all these scripts. We've got all these tools to set up. We're doing automated blue-green deployments, maybe manual to blue-green deployments sometimes, right? The whole process is very heavy. It's a lot of focus, and it's great that we learned these skills and we were able to get up and doing it, but there are better ways now. And finally, when we look at the actual infrastructure hosting, once you're actually out there, you're having to manage all of these like Kubernetes pods or VMs, or having to worry about how do I scale out my content delivery infrastructure and my layout services, worrying about that whole XP backend with XConnect and the XDB shards and all that stuff. There's a lot of infrastructure there to manage. On top of which, then you look at, okay, I want to do an upgrade, but it's not just the code I got to worry about. All of this infrastructure needs to be upgraded as well. So that all becomes just a huge, big hassle. And teams are looking at this and they want to modernize. They want to offload the responsibility and offload some of the risk too. We can do better. There is a better way now that we can go. And I hope a bunch of you have probably had a chance to work on projects where we go headless or we go on XM Cloud, and you felt like that better experience. I see there being two real options. There's probably some others that I would say like you could make works. Like for example, you could do XM Cloud with self-managed hosting of your Next.js. That could be an option. But I think that if teams are going to get the most out of what's out there right now, XP headless or XM Cloud are the ways to go that you're going to get the best like lift out of being on MVC right now. Going XP headless helps a lot with the front end flow, right? You're going to get all those modern dev stacks, whether it's Next.js, React, whatever. And you get all the benefits that are coming with those serverless hosting tools like Vercel and Netlify, right? Constantly automated builds that happen. It spins up new environments for your preview on every single branch that you have in your code. There's some really great advantages of moving to that modern front end stack. Now you do still have to manage the whole XP backend, so that still is a problem, but at least it's like going down the path, and you're now aligned better with going to XM Cloud in the future. Now, obviously, XM Cloud, you get all the benefits of that XP headless setup with the front end, but now you also get all those new authoring tools like pages and components that come with XM Cloud. And additionally, you're now not having to worry about the infrastructure. You're not having to do the upgrades on the CMS. You do have to upgrade the JSS every now and then just to keep up to date, but at least it's like a huge lift of responsibility off your shoulders. The other thing that comes with XM Cloud is that Experience Edge layer. So that global content delivery, which you can use for more than just your website, that's actually a really big benefit. And I started comparing the two of these. This don't try to read all this table now, but the idea you can get as you look through it is that there are benefits to just staying on MVC today. But all of those benefits you can also get by going to XP headless. One of the benefits that I see with XP headless that's really great is that you can kind of reuse your existing licensing. So there's some customers out there, they're on perpetual. They don't want the big move to XM Cloud licensing. They feel it's scary going to subscription. Going to XP headless, if they've got the license for it, that gives them that benefit to kind of stay with what their licensing is, but then get some of these benefits at the front end. So I see that as a big thing. And the other thing you can do is you can still customize the CMS backend if you want to stay on that. I wouldn't recommend it if the plan is eventually to get XM Cloud, but that is still an option that's there. Now on the XM Cloud side, you do have a benefit of being able to do some SaaS hosting of the CMS, which is huge. Not having to do upgrades on that infrastructure, not having to worry about backups or any of that stuff. And you get Edge right away. You don't have to pay extra for it. I would say like the downside is probably that customization piece. Some customers really, really, really want to customize, and that there's a different model, right? You have to do webhooks, separate apps running outside, and they're getting better. Like it, I don't know if anyone watched the symposium stream or was able to go to Nashville, but they're having this way of like embedding tools right into XM Cloud now, which is going to be coming in the future. I'm excited for that because right now it feels a little disjointed when you build your tool outside and authors have to kind of like switch to something else. So I think that's going to be a really great benefit. So I talked a lot about stuff, and it can feel like it's going to be a big, huge cost to do that. So one of the things that we need to talk about when we're talking to customers is what's the value that I'm going to get. Now for the technology team, there's a whole bunch easy to look at, right? Like we're working with modern front end frameworks now. We're getting the advantage of all that speed of rapid prototyping that you can do. Now we're on to better serverless delivery. The DevOps flow is just so much better with how much comes out of the box that you just don't have to worry about. It really is an easy button now. And the whole decoupling of it really allows us to open up possibilities. So I think we've been talking about headless in the Sitecore community for a long time, and there's some obvious benefits for the technology team. The business team, though, also is getting value of this. One of them is by aligning with where the whole industry is going, where Sitecore is going. By getting over onto that, you're making sure you're getting a bit of future proofing, right? So that you can align with where stuff is going and take advantage of what's coming out and not just feel like you're falling further behind. There's also something that happens when we move to these modern frameworks. They're very component driven. What that does is it forces us away from some of the old builds that had that like page build perspective, the ones where you like go into content editor, it's one big form of fields and everything is driven by one component on the page that just pulls from that. And we get into a more componentized architecture, which really helps authors. And that allows also to have a high reusability. So just forcing everyone into that component thinking is really great. And if you wind up on XM Cloud, the new Pages interface really streamlines authoring. It goes so much faster when you're going in there. I use Pages for authoring myself, and I just have such a hard time going back to Experience Editor. There's some times where there's like things that aren't in Pages and you have to go back to Experience Editor, and it just feels so clunky after being in the new UX. And one of the things we don't often talk about with the business is the staffing. So as partners, those of us who are working consulting side, it's great that it's really hard for a customer to find Sitecore talent because then they come to us and they can say, hey, we need somebody who really knows Sitecore to come in and do this. But one of the great things that's happening with this move is we can find like a React developer and bring them on and have them work with a Sitecore expert. And we can scale out that team so much faster now and so much easier. It really does reduce the overall cost for a customer to staff their team. So I think that's really a great benefit that's coming along with this move. So that's on the kind of like the why. So let's talk a little bit about like XM Cloud specifically, because I think that's going to be where a lot of customers are going to be talking to Sitecore about. What is some of the good stuff that's there? I've talked a lot about the no upgrades and the easier to staff, things like that. The new UX, I think, is like one of those like separating factors, the pages, components. It really is a very different experience now from what we have on XP. And I feel like that addresses a lot of pain points that people have. And what the other big piece is, why are people wanting to manage all that CMS infrastructure? There are reasons that they need to. There are some situations, XM Cloud's not a fit. But if you fall into a place where XM Cloud has everything you need, why would a business not want to focus on something else and not have to worry about all that? Now, specifically in XM Cloud, the new components thing I think is very cool. I think it's going to have a lot of interest from folks. I do think it's not going to be used everywhere, but it's got some really nice ways for marketing teams to really get into it. So I think that's a piece in XM Cloud that is kind of a differentiator right now. Now, I don't know how many people have already seen XM Cloud, but I figured I do just like the briefest of walkthroughs on it just to, see how it looks. I'm going to pull up. Does everybody see me showing pages right now? I'm going to switch over to that tab here. All right. So what I've got here is my editor. I'm just going to refresh here because I'm having my browser's not responding. I'll do that. Okay. Alrighty, so what we have here is the Pages interface, which is the new experience editor. Everything's kind of laid out all in one panel. I'm just going to let's create a little subpage here. And you can pick out your template, and now I'm just going to name this just for you guys, Jaipur. All right, so I'm giving my fresh page. It's got my header and footer for my shared layout, and I can start adding on components. And when I go into the components listing right here, I can see everything that's available to me. Got kind of a drag and drop. I can also go to the placeholder and pick. These things at the top are all components from Component Builder. So these are preset built by marketers. And then you can also have all of your components that have been built by the developers. In my particular case, for this little demo, I'm just going to drag a little multi-banner on. And this allows me to start editing right away. So let's say, welcome to XM Cloud. Power to build. And there's some interesting stuff that we've been doing in our builds where we can like do like special characters in here, and then we have some front end code that's taking that to do some cool styling. And so this is like just very basic, right? Just type and go. You notice I never hit save at any point because it's auto saving as I go. This is a big pain point for people on XP, being able to like just quickly get everything done. And one of the things I want to do is I want to set like a video on the background, and I currently don't have that ability here. So I'm going to switch over to the Explorer. Now, I apologize for while I switch into console mode here just a moment. My browser, for some reason, does not want me to actually use Explorer unless I go into DevTools and then refresh. I don't know what's going on there, but now I've got kind of more of a content editor feel, right? Where I can see the actual fields that are available to. There's background image I could set. But what I want to do is I'm going to set a video here, and I actually have something already up. Drop this in. All right, so I have this video that I want to stream off of Cloudflare right now. And again, not having to, it's already saved just by putting it in there. And now I can refresh my canvas. So you can either refresh your browser, or there's the reload canvas that's available in the tool. Now my banner is showing, and I can start checking it on different devices very quickly. And also there's this little eye available to you. So you can go into the preview. I can see what it would look like and run all of my front end logic. So now I'm seeing that styling on the special characters. I'm not seeing any of the editing window. This is what I was intending to do. So it looks like I've got what I wanted. Well, that's just a banner. How do I get some content in here? Now, I don't have time today to go ask my devs to build some new components. So what I want to do is I'm going to work from one of these Sitecore components and then start changing it up. So I'm going to drag and drop this piece in. Now this component is coming from Component Builder. I can't edit it at all in here in Pages. I actually have to switch over to the Component Builder. I can open components on the left and then find my component, or on the right, I have this little red button here where I can quickly jump in. And now I'm in the Component Builder Canvas tool. So this allows me to really start out without any developer help, start building some stuff out. So this is that low code, no code capability. In my case, I want to put something in here that's kind of like a promo. So I'm going to start building it out. And we have all these items that we can choose from to add in. I picked a card, and I want to create a 2-column. Let's stretch it out so it fills up. Let's just drop a couple blocks in. And then let's put one more. So I get my right column. I'm going to put it at the end of the card. All right, so now I've got a left and a right. Now let's start getting into putting some elements in there. Let's some content on the page. I'm going to start with an image right inside this left side. And here I've got all the properties that I can set on it. And I want to be able to put an image in here. So let's go into the image source. Let's put a paste URL. There we go. And let's start creating some content over here. Let's, how about a heading? Yeah. And then let's put a little paragraph in here. Drop in some content I've got prepped. Now let's drop one last thing in because I want to try to drive someone somewhere. Let's grab that button element. Where did I hide that? It's down here somewhere. There it is. My eyes were failing me and I couldn't see it. So here I can set up the text what I want. Let's say watch now. And I'm going to put that over to that little link. Oh, that's the wrong link. That would take me to a webinar. That's not going to help. How about that? There we go. Okay, and again, I'm not really saving any of this stuff. It's just happening as I go. But what I do want to do is make this available to the other tools. So I'm going to restage it so that it gets this new version of the component. Actually, I'm just going to update this to, I don't want to, Stampede was a while ago. I can force the save, stage that again. Alrighty. Okay, so I'm done with my component editing. Now when I come back here, refresh the canvas again, go take a look. There, now I've got what I wanted from a components. Can come take a look at it. And I didn't have to involve any dev to like build out new layouts or anything. And all of that came with XM Cloud. I didn't have to put those pieces in. So that's the real power. You're not going to use it a lot, but it's a really quick way and a cool way for marketing teams to have a little bit of capability to be, independent as they go about doing things. Alrighty. So if I come back here to, we took a look at the pages piece. The other thing that comes out of the box with XM Cloud that is there is a certain level of personalization capability. Very different from how they do it in XP. So in XP, if you've used personalization, you have to like pick a component, build up different rules, and then put like the different variants on each rule at a component level. XM Cloud flips that up to the page level, and you create audiences, and then you do all of your personalization for that one audience. So you have different variants at a page level, which I feel captures really well like what most marketers are trying to think through when they're thinking about their website. When you're doing it, you're using this audience builder. It has a whole bunch of conditions on it, and you kind of like drag and drop and start configuring your rules as ands and ors. And then that defines who goes into that bucket. And then based on that, then you're going to serve up your components. So we're going to take a quick look at that. We're going to take the page that I just built and let's do some personalization. All righty. So I've got this here, and at the very top, I've got this little button where I can hit personalize. And now I've got on the left these variants. There's only one, right? Just my default. I'm going to create a new one. Now, in my case, what I want to do is I want to create something that's going to target the West Coast of the United States. So I have a campaign that I'm running there, and I want them to see something different on this page. So I can just start here in the middle, and I can also open up on the side to see what all these conditions are. These allow you to target things about the visitor. You can target things about the session of what they've been doing, or there might be things about like the current date and things like that that you might want to access. Now, in my particular case, I'm wanting to target a country and a region. So I'm going to use this new country region rule. I'm hoping they expand this in the future for the data. Right now, you can only pick the United States to do this with, but it's actually really helpful for working with the US states. So I can start doing, let's add another one. Actually, we're going to do 3 states here. So all in the United States, and I want Washington, Oregon. Alrighty, let's make those ors. Okay, so I've kind of created what I want to do, create this. If anybody falls into one of these 3, I want them to see this page variant. I can close this, and now on the side here, we've got 2 variants, the default and then the West. And you'll notice that on this West, when I look at my page, there's these little yellow things. Hey, you haven't personalized this yet, just to help the author know that, hey, you should go do something here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change this banner. I'm going to change the content item. Here we can see the one I already have. That's from the default. And let's create a new multi-banner. We're going to call this the West banner. Okay, so we come back to our editing. We're able to start up here. I'm going to switch back to my editor. And then now that variant goes away. I come back to personalize, and I can switch. So when you're wanting to edit with the editor, you're going to be in this view. Here we're going to have, let's say, head for the coast. Rise higher. Oh, something interesting, right? And then we can take a little preview of that. I haven't set an image or anything on it, but this is just to show you that now I've got this other variant. It's working. Some of the content is the same. Some of it is changed. But if someone falls into that particular audience, they're going to see that version. I think that's a kind of a neat way that the personalization works. Figured I'd show a little bit of that. All right, let's head on back to our presentation here. Now, I've shown a little bit of demo. I hope everybody has probably seen some of that before, but just as a refresher, it's like that's kind of the stuff that we would want to show customers about. Here's like how easy it can be and how fast the authoring can be. I want to talk a little bit about like how we then take where we are, use these tools, and then get to a better tomorrow, right? So first off, we are looking at all these problem areas, the things that we want to adjust and we want to change. If we look at local development first, by switching over to this new tech stack, we're going to get faster feedback loops. We're going to be able to drop out a lot of the old .NET stuff, work on newer frameworks like Next.js. And not only can we work full stack with Docker like we do today, if that's your preference, but now we have that option of just running a lightweight node framework, have front-end teams just have their code, go in, make their changes, and just rapidly develop on the application now. We also have this ability right now with the CI/CD to offload a lot of this. So Netlify or Vercel, they're going to be able to handle every check-in going to a preview environment. They're able to manage a lot of the security, the infrastructure scaling. You get all of this stuff, and your code is just being able to rapidly prototype all the time. It makes your CI/CD so much easier, and you don't have to manage it as much. And the same happens with the XM Cloud deploy app. If you go with XM Cloud, that is able to have check-ins and builds, and it spins up the new XM Cloud environment and swaps them around for you. It's just so much easier from a whole like DevOps perspective. Just feels a lot better. And then on the hosting side, now you don't have to worry about scaling out the delivery. You don't have to worry about how many layout service endpoints you need. You have Experience Edge, making sure your content's everywhere. You get that global scale. You are able to have a lot of observability. These tools have the tools there so you can go and get the information you need on your front end app and how it's performing. And no more infrastructure maintenance, no more updating your VMs, no more relaunching new app services. You don't have to version upgrade your Sitecore anymore. It just kind of gets pushed for you. So this is all really great stuff and addresses those pain points that we were seeing in the old MVC world. So that sounds easy, right? Like but there's things we have to watch out for. So this last section of what I want to do is I want to talk through what those things are. What are those things that we need to be like thinking about and watching out for and trying to plan around as we try to go to headless or we try to go to XM Cloud? There are too many to cover today. I want to like put like 6 categories. And these ones are like different sections, like how do you deal with the whole cost of it? How do you deal with the needs of compliance and security at a customer? What way do you go about doing your project? Do you want to do a big bang, meaning we'll just do a huge project, do everything, and then flip the switch from the old to the new? Or are we doing it a bit by bit and having like one site move over and then we'll move another site, that kind of idea? And then search and forms I want to call out because those tools are just not there anymore. There's headless search and there are headless forms, but they're not really compatible. So we got to plan for that. And then from a DevX side, there's a few things I want to touch on. And XM Cloud personalization, I just showed you some stuff to think about when you're going through that migration. Okay, so let's talk about making the case for the cost of a cloud migration, right? A lot of people look at it and go, oh, this is going to be a huge project. Is it really worth it, right? So one of the things to think about is, does the organization have a need to stay in compliance on support? So you'll see some customers, they're on like Sitecore 7.2, right? They clearly don't need to keep up on a supported version. But there's others that have to keep doing these upgrades. So every couple of years, they're going through an upgrade project. That's a really great place where you can talk about XM Cloud and its auto upgrades and how you don't have to do that anymore. And you can stay compliant and stay on support without doing these regular projects. So there's a place where there's a lot of value for them. There's also the concept of doing redesigns as you're moving to headless. So you're already in there. You're going to rip apart all the front end code anyway. Might as well get a fresh new look, relaunch the brand, do something like that, right? So that is a great way to make a good value out of that migration. But if you just did that, like if you just refreshed the site on your old MVC thing, it's not going to feel as appetizing to go and then do that all over again. So that's something to consider, is that maybe now's not the right time. Maybe we need to wait for that moment when a new refresh is going to happen. The other piece around future proofing and aligning with the Sitecore roadmap, going headless is going to allow you to get there, right? So some teams have been doing that. They're already headless and they're running on XP. So making a jump to XM Cloud might be easier for them. They might have less of a cost to them to have to do that big migration. If they're looking at doing kind of a rebuild to headless, maybe they're choosing, maybe XM Cloud's not the right move for them right now. Maybe doing a gradual move to headless on XP is going to be how they do their first step as they try to get there. And I wanted to make a call out on content migration. Content migration tends to get just kind of lumped in like, oh yeah, we'll move the content, but it can be complex. And if you're doing a redesign and you're going to headless and you're doing all this other stuff, a lot of the content you have might not even make sense anymore. So I think a good part to like reduce cost here is to like really look at the content you have and think, are we migrating? What do we really want to migrate? What is really going to be kept? Only migrate that stuff. That's going to reduce the complexity of your content migration, and you can kind of start fresh with your new look in some places. All right, moving along, compliance and security. There are organizations that have very rigid requirements, whether it's data residency or they've got issues with having to be HIPAA compliant in the States, or SOC 2 or something like that, right? They've got these things that they need absolutely. Now, Sitecore just announced that they've got that HIPAA compliance now, so that's another little check mark, but they don't have every compliance in the world. And so one of the things we need to check is, what are the compliance needs of an organization, and does the software have it? So when we look at a serverless host, Vercel and Netlify have a whole bunch of them. Like Azure's got a whole bunch, AWS has a whole bunch, but if you start looking at some of the other ones, they don't. Something like I don't know, Google Firebase, for example, can serve up Next.js, but it's in a preview. They don't have any compliance around it or support or anything. That might not meet the needs of somebody. So that's something you got to check up front on this. Make sure that the tools you're choosing match with what the organization needs. Some organizations also need really fine-grained control over the infrastructure to be able to like put firewalls in place and rules around the internal LANs and stuff like that. XM Cloud doesn't do that really well. That sounds like a really good case for maybe XP headless is the right way to give them the back end control over the infrastructure. And regions is another thing. If you do at XP headless, you can kind of choose your region, right? You can go to whatever host you want in any region, start spinning it up. But if you start going into serverless, XM Cloud has specific regions where they serve. Even the serverless hosts like Netlify and Vercel, they've got hundreds and hundreds of places you can go and put it, but it's not every city, it's not every country. For example, Vercel doesn't have one in Canada. What Netlify has one in Canada. So like us Canadians, if we have a customer here and they need Canada, sometimes they choose Netlify over Vercel. And that is part of their decision process, is what regions do they have in the list. And one of my favorites is the Big Bang versus the incremental. I am a big proponent of like agile delivery, of incrementally getting better, continuous improvement. So I love that model. It doesn't always make sense, and sometimes it costs more in the end. I like it because I get to do a smaller chunk right now, and I get to have a return on that investment right away, right? So I can build a small thing, launch it, and everybody can get happy and get a good win early on. But the big bang can sometimes save you overall by reducing the overall cost and timeline, just doing one big project. The one big project is huge and takes a while, but depending on your customer, that might be the right choice. If you have a huge project, like 40, 50 sites, something like that, or even if it's like 10 or something, having a small bit where you start small, launch a couple of them, get everybody used to it, start adopting it iteratively, where teams can come on from, like, you grab one marketing team from one product and they can come in and they can come onto the tool, learn it. That can be a really interesting approach, so you can gradually roll stuff out and have the whole organization change and transform at a more gradual pace, something that might be easier to adopt. But that might not, in a smaller case, that might not be as much of a fit. So those are the things you got to think about is like, what's the size of what we're looking at here and how fast do we need to do it? Either way you go, there's going to be this kind of dual environment that you need to worry about, right? There's going to be the new and the old. And in an incremental approach, you're actually going to have new and old production live being hit by users. So you're going to have for a while these two environments that are just going and you have to maintain and keep them up and going. So it's just something that needs to be planned for and understood by everybody. And that also leads to a data strategy issue. When you do a big bang approach and you just cut over from the old to the new, all your analytics data is now over here in the new area, which is great. Very easy, seamless. You don't have to worry about it. If you do incremental, though, you've got two productions. You got two sources of data that are going into possibly two different sets of analytical tools. So how is the customer going to rationalize their holistic view of their analytics across these two systems? Now, this doesn't necessarily say there's anything wrong with doing that or there's not ways to do it. It's just a piece people don't often think about when you're going into an incremental approach is how do we handle all this data with two different systems? You might have data going in XDB and then data going into CDP, for example. And now how do we track our customers that are all over the place? I put here just an example phased approach. If somebody wanted to do this, where you could um, try to figure out what your plan is and then go in and start tackling a small pilot project with a couple of the sites just to get the whole organization up and used to doing XM Cloud and headless. The real advantage with going headless too is that your site search now also becomes headless and you can do it on your existing site at the same time. So you don't have to wait for that XM Cloud project to get done before you're doing that site search. And that really allows you to bring your timeline down a little bit and get people getting value of what they're purchasing. Then we start adopting, we're bringing teams in, they're getting on it, and then we can finally start, okay, let's start going looking at all those other sites. Go back to the number two stage and start cycling over there, bringing those on. And as we're going, we're taking down the old infrastructure for those old sites. So you can have this like gradual shift. So that's an example way of how you might do a phased approach on a customer at a like high level planning. Okay, moving along. Search and forms. If you're looking at headless search, it's not going to be compatible with the old solar ways of doing things. The forms that are available with XM Cloud Forms, it's not the old MVC forms. It is not the WFFM of old. So you have to pick a tool. Now, this could be a Coveo or Sitecore has Sitecore Search. You've got the option of like something like an Algolia, maybe, and there's some others that are out there. You need to find one. Experience Edge is there. It has an API endpoint. If all your needs are like listings or like super simple queries, maybe you could get by without even a tool. But almost any customer who has actual search needs, they're going to need an actual search tool. The Edge is not a search tool. And from a forms perspective, uh, this is like stuff that came out of like Sitecore Send and has evolved here for XM Cloud. It's not at all compatible. It also doesn't store any data. So it actually uses a webhook build where you set up where the data is going to go. So this is a different way of thinking about it. And you're going to need to like rethink how we go over. And the new strategy has to be how many forms do we actually need to move? What did they do? Maybe XM Cloud Forms isn't a fit for what's in the old build. Maybe you could do stuff with customizations to WFFM or something. Now you might have to do a custom form over in XM Cloud. There also might be system integrations that need to be thought about, like how is XM Cloud going to integrate with these other systems? Let's figure that out. And something that's interesting is that when we go to headless search, we're no longer limited by what Search Solar was doing and having to create custom indexes the same way. We now can like define different indexes from different places and have this kind of like federated search capability, which is really awesome to be able to have like multiple sites all have one search that's all indexing them all, and your users can just be skipping around through different subdomains. I think it's a really great thing to have to think about, but it in the migration, this is an opportunity to take advantage of that maybe wasn't there before. Now, quickly on DevX, I talked about how moving to new frameworks is really awesome. The downside is that if you've only ever done MVC, having to learn Next.js is a really different way of thinking. I know that, like, just thinking about the page lifecycle in a React app just breaks my mind. It's not the way I think. It's not the way I was trained, right? And there's a serverless hosting capability now too. Like, you have to learn all this new technology. So there's a lot of upskilling. One of the things beyond the devs though happen is that there's a lot of teams that manage infrastructure and they manage the processes around infrastructure, whether it's security compliance or they have just very specific ways that code gets into production. They may not have processes that are used to dealing with a serverless infrastructure. They might have very rigid requirements and they have to learn about all this new stuff. And those teams have to adapt their processes to be able to take in what this is. I mentioned a while ago about CMS customizations. As a dev, if you're thinking I'm doing something headless and I want to not break my path to XM Cloud, Sitecore doesn't want you doing CMS customization. So that means no new pipelines on the CD, nothing like that, right? So you're having to think about things in a different way, bring it into the Next.js app, or maybe you have a separate app that's doing that fashion. Don't be putting stuff into the content editor because they're going to get rid of content editor one day. So that's the type of stuff that we have to be thinking about as we're making solutions now. How do we future proof it? And along those lines is serialization. When you get to XM Cloud, TDS does not work. Uh, there's a way to shoehorn Unicorn in, but ultimately Sitecore is saying, like, use SCS, the Sitecore content serialization, if you want to be able to really work with XM Cloud. So that means rethinking as we move to headless, whether it's XP headless or XM Cloud, how do we change the way we're handling our content in our dev flow? Finally, wrapping up on XM Cloud personalization, they are not the same. I talked about how there's like page variants versus like the component level. We need to know that they deal with things in a different way. It's not server side, it's now headless. So they're approaching it differently. Once you understand what the differences are, you can start helping a customer go through it. And some customers are going to be like, oh, I need to get personalized or I need to get CDP. I think that for most cases, starting off with basic XM Cloud personalization is probably enough, like just to get people going without doing it. And then, grow when they need to, right? Like, okay, now you've done everything you can do with what's in the basic out of the box. The beauty of the composable approach is you can just add on the stuff later, right? And get it there. So I think that's a great approach where we can grow our stack as we hit the limits of what we have. And one thing I want to call out is during the migration, don't try to migrate the rules. Trying to think about things like component rules and then thinking about page variants, they don't match up. You have to take this implementation that's over here in XP and kind of reverse what was the strategy, what were we trying to accomplish, what was the experience we wanted to deliver, who were the personas we were targeting, and then from that strategy re-implement in the way that it makes sense now for XM Cloud personalization. Don't try to go from implementation to implementation. Make sure you're achieving the same basic strategy that everybody was going to, and then implement it the way it's supposed to be rather than trying to like copy paste and mirror the two ways. All right. So thank you very much. I know that was a very long period of things where a lot of stuff, but I just had so much in my head I wanted to get out. So I hope that was helpful. I hope we understand kind of why things are making the move now. What are some of the things we can call out? And what are some of those challenges that we want to be planning through and talking through with folks so that we make the right choice of what's the right headless solution for us going forward. And with that, I'd love to hear, like, what is on your mind? What are the thoughts you have? What are the questions you have? Or if you've gone through this process, did I miss some stuff that I should be putting in this deck? I want to learn more about like what y'all have been doing too.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. So, anybody, if you have any queries, so either you can ask here or just put that on the chat window. And Jason, like I have posted some questions over here, so maybe we can go them one by one.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Oh, here I'm seeing Craig. That was a couple years ago, the Sitecore docs. I don't know if everybody knows what he's talking about, but I did a video series like I want to say 2 or 3 years ago where I was trying to do dramatic readings of Sitecore documentation, and there was one that I did. Rodrigo told me I had to wrap one. So if you find that video, know that I had a lot of fun doing it, and I apologize in advance. But yes, thank you, Craig, for remembering that.
Bring it back. It was great.
I don't know if I'm going to put the shades on. I still have them around here somewhere. Oh yeah, yeah. My Sitecore shades for doing the videos. Yeah, I'll try to do that one day, I guess. How's the data security in XM Cloud, Rinku? So could you explain what you mean more about what data security are you concerned about? Are you concerned about
Like
the infrastructure, the region, the like
it can be
what's
a
the area of
company.
security?
Like some customer may have some specific data they don't want to share. Like they don't want them to share to anybody else for any misuse. So in
Oh, you
that,
mean in terms of privacy?
yeah, the privacy one.
Oh,
So
okay. All right. Yeah. So the biggest approach that XM Cloud does is they try to never store stuff in general. So like I mentioned with XM Cloud Forms, n- they never put it in XM Cloud. So that's their kind of like bypass on it. They make sure that if it goes into XM Cloud, then you have to configure it to go somewhere else so that your data privacy actually falls on another tool. So that's one of the things they do through that, and then they encrypt those communications so that you don't have to do it. The other piece that uh, may not be hit with data security is when you talk about like regional. So they have very specific regions they offer in. So any data that is in the personalization tools is only where those are hosted. So there may not be data residency requirements for some countries that get met with it. So that's something to worry about if you have a very strict scenario. Um, the the data that they have for things like personalization, where they're tracking that goes actually into Sitecore Personalize. So XM Cloud doesn't have the data. It sort of has the data. It's just wrapping it around into the personalized regions. And so then it falls under all the Sitecore Personalized data security. And they've done a really good job of meeting really strict privacy requirements. So they have all the endpoints you need to meet your GDPR and be able to do the implementation. Um, but out of the box, it's pretty strict on what it does. I would say it meets most of the data security requirements I have, but I'm not one of those security lawyers. So that's one of those things where I would make sure that a customer goes and looks at like what is in those like detailed link details about how they store the data. But they were able to meet HIPAA, which is not easy to do in the United States for healthcare data. And so for me, that if you can get that, you're probably okay for most scenarios from a data privacy issue. Um, Next question up here is to check. Oh, sorry, there was a question there, Venkata.
yeah, it's like to check anything on CD. Like currently, what we do is like we check the things like we go to the web DB and cross check their stuff. If something is not working on a live site, but it's working on the CM, right? Now here we don't have the interface. It's only Edge API through which we can validate the things. So is there any better approach to validate those things apart from Postman or
Yeah, so you're talking about like there's an error happening in production
right?
that let's say a page is not displaying for whatever reason. It's thrown a 404 and you're sure you hit publish. How do you figure out that it's going? And right now you have to like go to the Edge API to double check it's there. Um, One of the techniques I use is I run locally. One of the advantages of headless is that you can run your app local and actually just point at your production edge endpoint. So you can have the app locally and debug your code uh, and see where it's starting to fall. And just if you can reproduce it locally, then you know there's something wrong that you can now start debugging. And that allows you to have a more visual way to kind of see what's happening. If it's actually an edge issue, the best way to check is that edge endpoint because it's kind of like the old way we used to do. It's like go look at the WebDB, right? Is that page version actually there? That's kind of what going into the Edge API is like. The queries, if you have like just a common query, like there, you can save that, and then I know it doesn't look as pretty as us going into the content editor and navigating through to find it, but it is the best way to just double check that publishing problem because that's usually what's happened. But I would say if you want running something local, point it at your production edge endpoint, and then that allows you to double check that you can reproduce the issue. You can also point straight at the CM. So you can point, instead of going to your edge endpoint, you can point over at the CMS, and that takes edge out of the loop from the publishing perspective. You can see, do we have the same issue if I point straight over? And that can help you start diagnosing where you want to go and look, whether like, is it actually a point with the caching on edge? The other piece too that can happen is that it's not edge and it's not anything to do with your application, and you actually have a caching issue in Vercel, for example. So now you have a whole different thing where, again, if you run locally, Vercel's out of the question, caching's not there, you might not see the issue. And so then now you have another tool you have to go look at. And there are tools in Vercel to do some log inspection and things like that. But if it comes down to, oh, something's in the cache, sometimes you just have to rebuild Vercel to like clear out whatever was there. I have had builds that just get stuck. Like you do it and it just refuses to update. The ISR isn't working and I can't figure out what it is. So I just put in a dummy check-in and like force it to rebuild. I that's kind of just, I wouldn't say that's a recommended practice, but for me, I find that sometimes I just have to do that. I have to kick it, turn it off and on again, old school, right?
Okay, great. And the last one is related to the personalization. So, in XM, we have personalization rule that we create based on the client requirement. Now, here we have
Yeah.
some preset of rules, right?
Yeah.
So, and I guess here we can't create the custom rules.
I think there are some things you can do. I'm trying to remember the details on this. It's been a while since I've looked into it. In general, I suggest that if you are the type of customer who needs to go beyond the rules that are in XM Cloud, personalize is probably the way you're going, because it means you are at a more advanced personalization level than what XM Cloud is aimed at. So that's usually what I would say. I think there are some things that you can do with XM Cloud in terms of not conditions per se, but there's something else that you can define custom. But yes, I would say that that's one of the benefits of XP Headless, is that you can go and use all the benefits of the old engine rule, but then you can't do the static as well and use headless personalization. You have to rely on server side all the time. So it's kind of a trade-off. It's not as performant. So I would say that if a customer is like, those rules aren't for me, I need more, that's probably an indication that they are going beyond and into a personalized stage. Um, there are ways you could do custom personalization with Vercel. So I don't know if anyone's played around with the middleware at all, but you can actually drop logic in the middleware. So it runs before it actually gets to your page, and you could essentially create your own personalization rules in code. It's not actually going to be editable by any authors or anything like that, but that is one way that if you needed to hack around it because somebody doesn't want to go and buy personalized, that you can hack your own middleware in. That'd be my option, I'd say. But yeah, personalized is probably the best way to go. Oh, and it looks like the next thing was Rob, and I didn't get to say goodbye before he had to drop. Oh, I didn't even realize Rob was here. A good friend down in Australia.
Hi, Jason. I have
Any
a
other
question.
questions we have in the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, well, my name is Raghav, and I work as a digital marketer. And my question is related to search engines and the web pages that we build on Sitecore. Are they
Right.
search friendly? Are they search friendly? Like generally, what as an industry, most of the people suggest WordPress as a good publishing platform. It has got a good community for plugins and all that stuff. How much of support do we have for Sitecore if we publish pages on Sitecore and using this
All
as a
right.
platform?
Yeah. So I'll talk about WordPress just very quickly. Is like, so WordPress, it has a whole different approach to how they go about doing things. So when we're talking about like support from a community perspective, like they have this kind of open source background, right? So there's like the WordPress commercial that's a little more locked down, but then the WordPress community has like this huge open source build where they're all providing stuff. Sitecore used to have a big community around it, where we had modules that we would install and stuff like that. And you can still get that stuff for XP where you can like install things. It's a little harder to get that stuff now on XM Cloud. I would say that there's a marketplace that just got launched at Symposium, if that you can go in and have all these connectors and things like that. And they're looking at ways for partners to add more stuff into XM Cloud. But the ability for you to like really heavily customize the CMS right now is still ongoing. They showed some nice integrations though at Symposium that I liked, where they had like tools embedded in panes right there in the authoring interface. The approach right now is to go with having a tool that's using the APIs, so you can build your own plugins and stuff. And that's what a lot of partners have been doing, is building out these extra plugins. So if you're talking about just, is there a lot of community support? Absolutely. There are so many people around the world. There's like user groups. Like today, there's community forums. You've got Slack. You've got people putting GitHub stuff all out there. There are so many articles. So there's a lot of community support that's around it. The XM Cloud tool itself does not follow the same kind of plugin architecture that WordPress does. That said, you asked about search. The way it works is kind of up to how you implement your page. XM Cloud is not going to get in the way of your search. XM Cloud is going to let you have a tool that you can build your sites with, and then your front end application that you build, that's going to give whether or not you're actually able to serve up a site that's going to be heavily searchable. So having a good UX, having very good, fast delivery times. So using something like a Vercel or a Netlify, where you can just get really, really good lightning scores. That's the type of stuff that lighthouse scores, sorry, not lightning scores. You want to be able to get those types of things and metrics on your site up so that your site gets good ranking. You want to, all the normal marketing stuff, want to have your good keywords in your content, things like that. The tool is not going to get in your way. How you put your content together, how you then create your end application for your front end, that's going to be where you're going to hit the best bang for your SEO. I think there was another part, Raghav, that you had in there that you were interested about. That I don't know if I got all of your questions in there.
No, I think that's really helpful. I think you've covered both the search and the WordPress community thing. The other part I was just concerned about Sitecore is I think you've answered it. It's basically how much of it's not a platform problem. If we want to really get these pages appear in Google search, it's more like the way that we construct the pages. I think you
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like don't have 5 H1s on a page or something. It's like the marketing team has a lot of the power over that. But you do want to make sure your developers are making sure that they build out a really performant application, so that's not hurting you. When we deal in headless, you've got your platform for your authors, but then the devs are building that front end, and they've got to build a really solid application there. So you want someone who knows what they're doing to really get that there, and then have your marketing team own, we're going to build really great pages that have really good content. They've got the meta tags in there that you need. You get your OG tags for all your social embedding, things like that. So there is a piece in here of solution architecture to give the authors what they need. So Sitecore has a heavy customization capability to define your templates, and you want to make sure that your build has all the tools you want. So if you're going in and saying, hey, these are my search requirements, I want to be able to specify my meta description, my meta tags, like all this stuff, then your build team that's going to build it has to go and define your templates to give you all the fields that you need to provide that, and then make sure that it shows up in the application. Because that would be really irritating if you put in your meta description and then it doesn't show up in the page, right? Canonical tags, you might need canonical tags, but if somebody doesn't implement the canonical support, then you can't do it.
I thought you were just a techie guy. No, you talk full of marketing now. You've talked everything about SEO. Yeah. And what's your website?
It's an unfortunate habit of having spent too many years in this industry and now having had too many different types of jobs.
Yeah, that's really good to know. And what's your website? A fish tank? I don't have the domain.
Oh yeah, you know what? I didn't do it very, very well. Here, I'll just drop